Hello. It's been a little while. The first thing I want to say is please ignore the mic situation. I just wanted to make sure that there was actually good audio quality for this, as this is probably one of the most important videos I think I've ever made and possibly will ever make. This is my diagnosis story of POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which we'll go into a little bit more later. But I kind of wanted to get this story out there because when I was getting my diagnosis, there were a few people that I found on social media extremely comforting and helpful. One of them, her name is Madison on TikTok, and her videos, although short as TikTok is, made me feel at least less alone. And I hope this can help people feel less alone as well. POTS is something that's extremely misunderstood. I think a lot of people think it's a crazy person's disease or something that's not important to pay attention to. And I would argue the very opposite. Living with POTS has been such a struggle and a whirlwind in my life, and it's something that now I know I've lived with for a while, but I didn't at the time know that. This video is going to be broken up into like 3 different sections. The first section is kind of the lead up to the diagnosis. The second section will be the diagnosis and the explanation of kind of everything that went on. And then the last section will be now, current day, what's going on? How am I? First, I kind of want to explain what POTS is. So, like I said, it's called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And I'm going to read the Cleveland Clinic explanation of what POTS is. They're a well-known resource around the world. Postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, also known as POTS, is a condition that causes your heart to beat faster than normal when you transition from sitting or lying down to standing up. It's a type of orthostatic intolerance. So then they go into break down kind of what each of those words mean, and I'm just going to explain that really quickly. Postural is related to the position of your body. Orthostatic is related to standing upright. Tachycardia is a heart rate of over 100 beats per minute, and syndrome is a group of symptoms that happen together. All of that to be said, let's start kind of from the beginning. So my entire life, I've always had this heat issue. I always used to say I would like get really hot in the summer or during work or certain things. I would always have to tell people that I have a heat condition. And I never really knew how to explain it except that. It was kind of the only way that I knew how to make people take it seriously. So for most of my life, I passed out when it got really hot. I always joked that I couldn't go outside over like 85-degree weather, which sounds crazy, but that's probably even pushing it nowadays. So I have many stories throughout my life of me passing out, either from stress. I passed out due to blood and other phobias that I have, as well as from heat. That was kind of one of the biggest triggers. My entire life has always been this heat issue. So I've brought this up to doctors before, and in my chart at the doctors, it always just says heat intolerance. And so everyone's kind of always been aware of it, but no one's really done anything about it. Until one day, I was at the Billie Eilish concert, which is a year ago today. Oh my God. My Billie concert was a year ago today. That's insane. Yeah, so a year ago today, this journey started, which is insane to think. I was at the Billie Eilish concert. We had GA, and we were waiting in line, me and my friend Claudia, and we were so excited to see Billie. And so we were waiting in line. We waited outside for about 3 hours, and it was freezing cold. It was in Pittsburgh. So while we were sitting there, we were watching TikToks and just kind of laughing and, just doing whatever, just trying to kind of wait out the time until the show. All of a sudden, my Apple Watch just kept buzzing on my wrist. And I was like, what the hell? So finally, after like the 4th or 5th time that it did it, I finally look and it's like extreme high heart rate alert. I'm like, what? And I look and my heart rate was over 170. It was like 172, 173. And if you know anything about heart rates, that's extremely high, like borderline, you should be worried. So immediately I was like, okay, something's wrong. The first thing that popped into my head, of course, is I must be too hot. So I had my regular concert outfit on, and then I also had on just like a regular shirt, a hoodie, and then a big jacket on over that. So I started taking things off. I took off my jacket, and immediately I kind of felt better, but my heart rate was still really high. So the first thing we thought is, was my Apple Watch acting up? Because I didn't feel like my heart rate was going really fast. We had me put on Claudia's Apple Watch, and I tried it on hers, and no, it was still very high. It was still like, 167, 170. Now I know this probably wasn't the smartest thing, but at the time, when you're in such a panic state, you don't really know what to do. I was like, I'm just gonna go walk down the sidewalk. Hopefully, it'll just calm down. Well, it never did. Knowing now, I know it would have never calmed down, but at the time I didn't realize that. In my brain, I just thought I was overheated. I needed to make sure to cool myself down in some way, and that was kind of the only way I thought to do it. After this, I just kind of felt really nauseous, exhausted for the rest of the day. I had a headache, just kind of didn't feel very well. Well, little did I know I would then go stand in a show for 4 more hours, and that would not help either. I think it never went under 130 for the rest of the day, if I remember correctly. So after this happened, I immediately was like, okay, I need to make an appointment to my doctor's office because something is wrong. This is not good. So I went and made an appointment with my doctor, and I was kind of telling her this whole story, and one of the first things she said to me is, have you ever heard of, she said the whole name of POTS. And I was like, no. Like, I had no idea what she was talking about. So she kind of explained what it is. So from there kind of started the diagnosis path. She referred me to a cardiologist as well as a neurologist. And I had more testing done in those 3 months than I think I have in my entire life. So from there, I went to a cardiologist first. And this was kind of the only doctor I ran into so far that has been extremely dismissive of the possibility of me having this disorder. He kind of came in and immediately sat down and was like, so what can I do for you? And I remember just being like, so I had this episode, and I kind of explained to him, and he goes, yeah, so I think you have a syncope issue, like a syncope syndrome. So at this time, I felt super defeated. I asked him, do you think it could be POTS? And he said, yeah, probably. And that was kind of it. He said, you need to exercise more. You need to get your heart rate up to like 180 and peace out. Like, that was pretty much the conversation. And I remember leaving there feeling extremely defeated, extremely angry, just very misunderstood, very dismissed. And I've learned through the time now that I've had this diagnosis that that's extremely common. POTS is not very understood in the medical community and or sometimes even believed. So afterward, I sent my regular doctor a message explaining what was going on. I said, I'm still meeting with neurology. I haven't made an appointment yet, but I will now. So she started ordering things in the meantime because she was like, all right, well, I think this is what you have. And from what we talked about, it sounds like it needs to be. Then starts the passing out every day. I started passing out every single day, if not multiple times a day. I think the most I passed out in one day was like 3 or 4 times. Just from nothing. Just from standing up from the couch, just from getting out of bed in the morning. There were mornings where I could not get out of my bed because I felt so dizzy, like I couldn't even move. And it's extremely disorienting to live so dizzy and so out of body feeling. It's something that's extremely hard to describe, but I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's an awful, awful feeling. So I started getting a bunch of blood work done, and I went to see the neurologist. The neurologist ordered a bunch of autoimmune disorder tests. The neurologist also ordered a brain MRI, something called a QSART test, and then something called a tilt table test. So when I saw the neurologist, she was extremely kind, extremely helpful. She listened to me. She talked to me for over an hour. She kind of understood every single thing I was talking about and made me feel like I wasn't crazy. Like I even told her when I stood, I felt like my hands and my feet all of a sudden were really heavy. And she was like, mm-hmm, yep. Like, and everything up until this point made me feel a little bit crazy. And I even said to her at one point, so I'm not crazy. And she was like, no, you're not crazy at all. By the way, you guys are about to see my cat go up my stairs. He just snuck in. So if you see him fly up the stairs, see something fly up the stairs, that's him. There he goes. Anyway, so I talked to her for a little while, and she explained once again what POTS is and how it affects the body. Essentially, your autonomic nervous system does not work correctly, and therefore your blood flow does not go up and down your body like it's supposed to. The best way I had it explained to me is most people's body is like a bottle of shampoo. When you move a bottle of shampoo, it moves, right? People with POTS, their body is like conditioner. So when you turn conditioner upside down, you know, it doesn't just flow naturally. It like clumps, or like you have to like really try to get it to move. That's kind of the best way to describe how POTS works throughout the entire body. For me, my POTS obviously affects my heart. I actually have a video that I took on Snapchat one time sending to my friends when I was during the diagnosis phase. And I had sat down and I stood up, and my Apple Watch went from like, I don't even remember, it was like 80 or something all the way up to 130 in like a split second. And that's how you pass out. Is your body gets so revved up because the blood is not able to flow correctly to your heart. It's not able to get there quick enough, so your body is trying to pull the blood up as fast as it can. You pass out either because your heart's working too fast or the blood is not able to get there at the correct pace. Now, everyone with POTS does not pass out. That's extremely important to know. I'm just one of the lucky individuals where I do pass out. So obviously, if you don't have enough blood circulating throughout your entire body, your head's gonna hurt, you're gonna feel not very well, you're gonna feel nauseous throughout the day. POTS kind of affects the entire body. So I went and got the blood work done for the autoimmune diseases like she recommended. And I also went and got a brain MRI with contrast. What else? Oh, the QSART test, and then the tilt table test. I had more blood work done in this 6-week period than I have in my entire life. It was torturous. If you know me at all, I am extremely blood and needle phobic. And so this was my worst nightmare come to life. It was awful. And there was a test called an ANA, and that came back positive. So, and if you have ANA or high ANA levels, this means that you more than likely have an autoimmune condition. So we then went and I got more blood tests done, and I had an extremely high ANA. I believe the second to highest level in the entire chart that you can have was what I had. And mine were fine and speckled, which is also known to be in autoimmune conditions. But all of my actual autoimmune conditions came back negative. So once again, I was feeling extremely confused because obviously if this ANA is that high, there's something in my body not right. There's something in my body going wrong. So luckily the brain MRI came back normal. There was no lesions or anything like that, which once again would link back to an autoimmune condition if something was ravaging my brain. There were no tumors or anything, to worry about. So I went and got a QSART test. And I laughed because I've learned recently that these tests are extremely rare to be done and they're very specialized. But they put these suction cups on you. They rub parts of your body with alcohol and they put these suction cups on you. And it essentially burns your skin. It's not the worst thing in the world, but you feel it. You know it's there. And what it's doing is it's measuring how your sweat works. Do you sweat enough? Do you not sweat at all? because I've always said that I don't sweat at all, and therefore my body can't regulate its own temperature. So the test came back that I have focal AAG, which is autoimmune autonomic gangliopathy, which essentially just means that I don't sweat enough. My body does not sweat enough, and specifically on my legs, which I can completely attest for. So the best way to explain not sweating enough or your body temperature just kind of always feeling high or getting hot, like me right now, I'm getting hot filming this, sitting here, is it feels like there's a little ball of fire, and then the ball of fire slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly spreads throughout your entire body until your entire body feels like it's on fire. And think about the hottest day you've ever been in, right? Like 100 degrees, 120 degrees, some of you. Think about that day on your body, and there's nothing you can do about it. That is kind of what AAG feels like. So that diagnosis came pretty early. That was one of the first ones I got. And when you look it up, it's known as an extremely rare disease, and there's nothing they can do about it, essentially. So that's a lot of fun. So there's kind of like the heat issue understood, but also POTS has heat intolerance. So we're still kind of going in that realm. So the last thing we had to do was the tilt table test. And I was extremely nervous for this because there was an IV for it. There was also an IV for my brain MRI. But with the tilt table test, you can't pass out before the tilt table test starts. And I am known to pass out with IVs. So I immediately was concerned. They pretty much told me if I passed out before, the tilt table test would be null and void. So I worked as hard as I could to make sure I didn't pass out. First, I went to neurology, and they put all these leads on my head because I had an EEG done at the same time. And I think I have pictures from that day. If I do, I'll put them in. From there, I went to the tilt table test, got in, got all situated, and you literally lay on this bed, and it puts you up slightly to like 30 degrees for an amount of time, and then it puts you back down. Puts you up at 60 degrees for an amount of time, puts you back down. Puts you at 90 degrees for an amount of time, and puts you back down. Now, the goal of a tilt table test is you're supposed to be able to make the full 10 minutes standing straight up, and then they'll put you back down and they'll evaluate you. This whole time, you have blood pressure monitors. I had my EEG going, and as well as a heart rate monitor on your finger. I had 3 people in the room, one doing the EEG itself, and then 2 girls monitoring me consistently the entire time. And you have to let them know if any symptom happens. So, like, if my head started hurting a little bit, if I felt like I could feel my heartbeat start going a little bit faster, if I felt like my feet and my hands were getting heavy, if I felt like I was going to pass out, I had to kind of let them know everything throughout the entire time. So as the tilt table test is happening, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, about 60 degrees, I started feeling it a little bit. I remember saying to them that I kind of felt like my head was starting to hurt, but nothing too crazy. And they're talking, all these mumbo jumbo numbers to each other that I don't understand, obviously. Well, little did I know, they were preparing for something, because when I went to 90 degrees, immediately I felt like I was going to pass out. So there's apparently, I met the doctor, the head doctor of this. The 2 people that were there were nurses, and he works in emergency, and they said that they would contact him if they needed to. Little did I know. I lasted standing straight up for less than 4 minutes, and I told them, my hands started feeling really heavy. My head was starting to go forward. I felt my eyes going. And I said to them, I feel like I'm going to pass out. And all of a sudden, the one girl goes, okay, we need to call. Her blood pressure is whatever the hell. It was some stupid number, like 200 something. It was dumb. And so I hear her on the phone. She's like, hi, her numbers are blah, 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 blah. And as she's talking to him, I say, all right, I'm going to pass out. And all of a sudden they say, oh, she's dropping. Get her down. All of a sudden I go from like this to like straight back to normal positioning. And they just, like, within a millisecond, just stopped me from fully passing out. And, immediately they all come around me and they're like, Ashley, can you hear us? Are you okay? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? And I was all right. I just laid there for probably 5 to 10 minutes. And once again, if you've ever passed out, it is the most disorienting, horrible, full body experience. And I hate it and it's awful and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But that's what I was feeling at the time as well. But I was on the drive home when I got the message from my neurologist that I was diagnosed with POTS. And I remember crying because I was so miserable. I had felt so awful. Immediately, she sent a beta blocker, or what I understand to be a heart medication, into the pharmacy. And I picked it up immediately and started taking it right then. So now we're kind of in the aftermath. What's life like now? Every day's a struggle still. Some days are better than others. There's a lot of symptoms that I don't mention anymore, that I don't talk about, that I just kind of live with every day, that, I don't mention to my family or my friends. Because if I did, people would hate me and they would think I'm the most annoying human in the world, because that's all I would talk about. I feel like now that's all I talk about, and it's can feel kind of isolating sometimes when no one else around you really has a chronic illness. So POTS is known as a chronic illness and is something that I will more than likely have for the rest of my life. There's no cure, there's nothing they can do, but with lifestyle changes, it can get a lot better, but it can take years, according to the doctors that I've talked to since then. Luckily, I'm so grateful for the Cleveland Clinic, and I just want to thank them. I doubt anyone would ever see this video from there, but if they happen to, I am so internally, externally, eternally grateful for everything they have for POTS. I would argue they're one of the leaders in POTS education, not only for their own staff, but for their patients as well. And I'm able to take classes with the head of neurology a lot of times where we talk about, different things you can do to help your POTS, different methods that they're currently researching. Get to talk to some med students sometimes who are working in the field and just kind of learn more about the condition itself, because it is so complicated and so complex, and I could be here for hours and talking about it, and it still would never be enough to explain kind of everything that goes on every single day in my body. So like I said, every day is a little bit different. There's some days where I wake up and I still can't get out of bed. There's sometimes when I wake up and I'm feeling fine. There's some days when I wake up and I'm feeling fine, and then a few hours later, I'm not feeling okay. And one of the hardest things for me has been the exhaustion. I have not been able to live the life I used to live anymore. And mourning that life is something that's difficult. According to my doctors, though, after years of hard work and diligence and doing all the things I've been trying to do to help, I should be able to get back to the life I had before and not feel so isolated and alone in this condition. So I think that's kind of everything that I wanted to talk about. The brain fog, which is a symptom of POTS, is kind of setting in now because I'm pretty hot. I've been talking for a while. So my ability to kind of still form coherent sentences and accurately and in an educated way talk about this condition is kind of going downhill a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye for now. But please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Please keep the comment section kind, as chronic illnesses in themselves, especially ones that aren't understood, are isolating and detrimental in their own rights. And having people in the comments either debate or say rude things about either me or the conditions themselves is not helpful for anyone. Something I think I forgot to say is kind of POTS can be brought on from a multitude of reasons. It can be brought on from a virus. It can be brought on from chronic stress, chronic trauma. It can also be brought on kind of randomly. But normally, the viruses in chronic stress and chronic trauma is kind of the ones that are most notable. Thanks if anyone got to this point in the video. I highly appreciate you watching and listening, and it kind of means the world to me that you would care enough to listen this far. POTS has been a journey. It's been a rough journey, and it's something that I think I'm learning every day how to live with a little bit better. I try to exercise every day. I try to eat as well as I can, but there's just some days where I feel like existing is just, like Anthony Padilla would say, existing is exhausting. That's kind of the best way to put it. So thanks to anyone that listened, that watched. I highly appreciate it. Like I said, please leave some comments if you have any questions or if you want to chat at all about the condition. I would love to. If anyone watching has POTS as well, let me know in the comments. I'd love to make some friends and get to know each other. Maybe I'll make some videos about like POTS and concerts, what I bring for like my medical devices that I use, things like that. I think that might be fun and also some education as well. So thanks again to anyone that watched, listened. I highly appreciate it. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye, guys.